My grandma had kidney disease. She used to take care of me, but then it ended up I had to start taking care of her at a young age. We would have to go with her to dialysis, where she gets hooked up to a machine to purify and clean her blood from all the toxins and replace the work of the kidneys. Yeah, as far as I knew, it got worse as she got older, and so the diabetes became kidney disease.
Can you reverse chronic kidney disease? The Keto Carnivore Diet, it can work. And I'm gonna talk to you a bit about that in this video. And you're gonna hear some of the stories of some of the personal experiences around how this has affected some of the people really close to me and their families. So according to kidney.org, in America, we have almost 40 million Americans that have some degree of kidney failure. When I started learning about ketogenic and carnivore and paleo diets, growing up, I constantly heard fears around protein and consumption of that causing kidney failure, causing kidney issues. But what we now know is that the majority of people that are affected by kidney disease to any degree are largely being affected as their diabetic markers, their pre-diabetic condition, their diabetic condition, the elevated blood sugar that has damaged the vessels within their kidneys. In this video, I'm gonna share some anecdotes from Eli's perspective, Dr. Cho. I'm gonna talk about my personal experience with the feedback I've gotten from people as I've been on the carnivore diet and the ketogenic diet. We're gonna talk about thoughts and the studies around protein consumption, how it affects your kidneys, my tests I've done with my own kidneys. We're gonna dive into the validity of the research, and then we're gonna come back and talk about what the real cause of kidney disease is.
So growing up, my grandma used to take care of me, and then the last memories I've had of her, because she developed from diabetes to kidney disease, is that she went from walking around to walking with a walker to eventually being bedbound in a hospital bed. Visiting nurses come continually be checking on her. She'd be hooked up to a dialysis machine twice a week, where we would have to ship her on a wheelchair. She didn't have strength anymore because she wasn't eating enough, and her appetite had failed because she couldn't eat any salty foods. It was part of the regimen of someone who has kidney disease. So all these things factored in. The last memories I had of her was her kind of developing dementia really quick. I'm not sure if that was related, but her screaming just these weird words like "father, father" when she was, in the last few weeks of her life. So it was pretty scarring as a child, and it financially impacted our entire family, where my mom had to shut down her store and take care of her as a cultural, familial obligation in the Asian culture. So it was just extremely impactful and really changed the course and trajectory of my life.
So personally, as I mentioned, I've never had any kidney issues. I've tested my kidneys now 3 times in the last 12 months, and I'm very fortunate and blessed that I have had healthy working kidneys. My family struggles with heart disease more than kidney disease, but some families, and if you're watching this video, you may as well be personally concerned about it or struggling with this as well. It's a big issue. More than 10% of Americans have some degree of kidney failure. So I want to take a step back and talk about the studies that were done. Back in the 20s and 30s, there were dog models with animals that were done where they saw that if they fed the animals more protein, they actually had a higher GFR, glomerular filtration rate, within the kidneys. This led researchers to sort of allude and think that having a food source or macronutrient like protein consumed could be taxing your kidneys, could be putting stress on your body, and that filtration rate that they saw in the dog model led them to sort of search for protein being the cause of potential damage to kidneys. This kind of makes sense. The kidneys serve quite a few functions within the body. One of the big things they do is they actually recycle our amino acids, our protein within our body, so that we don't pee out nutrients that are harder, take more metabolic energy to produce. And so one of the common things that is done is they will test kidney function, and in order for them to look at kidney function, they'll actually look at the albumin, which is an amino acid protein that your kidneys normally will put back into your blood and not allow you to pass through your urine. And when you have failing kidneys or chronic kidney disease to any degree, the level of albumin in your urine will be elevated. Essentially, failing kidneys don't do a good job of recycling the albumin from going out through your urine and putting it back into your body. The problem here is that researchers then said, okay, if you are peeing out protein, then protein must be the cause of failing kidneys. But the thing is, it's more complicated than that, because when we look at athletes, when we look at high performance people that consume large amounts of protein, oftentimes 1.2 to 1.5 to even 2 times the grams of protein per pound of body mass, we find that these people have very healthy functioning kidneys. Their filtration rates can be elevated, but in general, they don't have kidney failure. They don't have signs of kidney failure. Furthermore, if you look at the research, there are no studies that have shown a direct link between protein consumption and directly causing kidney failure. There are epidemiological studies that look at large sets of populations that then deduce correlations, but in order for us to actually isolate and look at the actual science, we have to dive deeper into the information. If you look at people that eat a lot of red meat, for example, oftentimes that population can be less health conscious. When we're talking about a community outside of carnivores or ketogenic dieters who are consuming fast food, lots of steaks, those people tend to have other habits and behaviors that can contribute to higher health risk factors, things that can lead to refined sugars, carbohydrate intake, foods that you wouldn't see in the more general population with people who are lower and more conscious maybe of eating less red meat as an example. Those individuals are more likely to be athletic, they're more likely to be less consuming of toxins and refined sugars, and thus gonna have less of a risk factor. So again, protein is used to measure if your kidneys are having failure, but it doesn't mean that protein is causing it. Your body cycles back the albumin, the protein, the amino acid, into your blood because it's expensive to create that, and it doesn't want to just urinate it out when you're processing your waste through your kidneys in your body. Higher protein consumption can lead to higher levels of BUN, what's called BUN, B-U-N, blood urea nitrogen in your body, but the urea nitrogen in your blood is not necessarily a bad thing. Elevated levels in your blood doesn't mean there's something bad going on. It can just be a sign that you're eating more protein. It's a byproduct of consuming more protein. Elevated creatinine, which is a byproduct of creatine, can indicate that there are some issues with your kidneys if you see it in your urine elevated. So albumin, the protein, if that's not getting filtered out and you're urinating it out, then that's a sign that you're having kidney failure. Or if you have elevated creatinine, that can also be an issue that your kidneys aren't properly functioning. The other thing is the GFR rate, the glomerular filtration rate. And this varies by your sort of descendancy and your race. So I think African Americans have a higher rate than Caucasians, for example, but the labs will tell you that. So look at that as well. That could be a sign that something is going on that's fishy. But I want to take us back to the meat of this video. What causes kidney failure? Well, if you look at the research that's out there and the information that we currently have available to us, it seems pretty conclusive that it's diabetes, that it's elevated blood sugar. And I think it helps us to kind of look at the structure of kidneys. Kidneys are basically organs in your body with millions of pockets of things called nephrons. So what happens is blood flows into the kidney and then it gets filtered, and some of it goes out to the urine that you excrete through your urination, and then other blood is then returned back to the body. And these nephrons essentially operate as very sort of delicate pockets that filter out the biochemical waste from what the body wants to preserve. When you have elevated blood sugar, when you have elevated insulin from a diet that's high in refined processed carbohydrates, refined sugars, your body get damaged. The vessels can no longer properly constrict and dilate the way that they need to in order to properly regulate blood pressure and also to move the blood flow within your body. The other thing that happens is the nerves in the body get damaged. They get desensitized, they get messed up by the hormones and the elevated levels of insulin, and this also causes further damage. And eventually what happens is you get failure in the filtration in those pockets in the nephron. But the idea here is that the blood sugar can't be elevated in your body. And when you eat a diet that's rich in refined sugar and carbohydrates, it's damaging that. If you're causing that damage, it's going to hurt you, and it's going to hurt a lot of what works in your body, your kidneys, your heart. There is so much information coming out now about how damaging this stuff is to you. Again, talk to your doctor if you have signs of this or if you think you do, but it's really clear in my experience and what I'm seeing in the research that it's really about elevated blood sugar and insulin. If you can get the insulin down, if you can lower blood sugar, your body can repair. There are cases where people are actually reversing kidney damage. So you're not totally lost here. You really need to respect the fact that for most people, biochemically, metabolically, you're gonna thrive on a diet that is low in refined sugars and carbohydrates. There are societies out there in the world that thrive on a purely carbohydrate diet. And then there's a lot of people in the ketogenic space where we thrive on a very high fat diet. When you put fat and carbs together, you see people have really big issues with their blood sugar, with their insulin, with that situation. But when you have one or the other, it's very different. Personally, I've never explored the high carb diet, and it may work very well for me. I don't know for sure. I've been on the ketogenic diet on and off for about 3 or 4 years now, and more recently a carnivore for the last year, which you can learn all about through my channel and through some of the content that I have on my blog. But I find that when you combine the two, which is what we do in most of the processed foods in the American diet, you get a really big disastrous recipe that elevates insulin, damages your body, just really makes it really hard for you to kind of maintain metabolic optimal wellness. So I want to summarize this and say that if you think that you're experiencing some of these signs of chronic kidney disease, talk to your doctor, get professional help. This is not something you want to mess with. And look into the research. There's a lot of information out there where a ketogenic diet, a diet that eliminates these refined sugars, these carbohydrates, lowers your insulin levels, lowers your blood sugar, can really, really help you. It could change your life, and it can attack the problem at the source and give you a new chance for hope. Eli's story is really touching. Obviously, it deeply impacted his family, and I know that a lot of people watching and people that have gone through this process with their family members, this is a big deal. And so I wanna close out and just say thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, like, share your experience in the comments below. If you've had CKD or if you've been able to reverse it or if you found ways to do that, I'd love to hear those anecdotes. We learn so much from not only from producing these videos, but also from hearing from you and the viewers on the channel, your personal stories and getting that feedback. It's always a two-way street. And then I would say if you're new and you want to learn more about the carnivore diet, go to my website, check out the link in the description. We just built out a foolproof carnivore diet roadmap, and it walks you through what you need to know from A to Z on the carnivore diet, how to get started, how to really do it in the right way, and how you can thrive on it. As always, thanks for watching and stay healthy.